Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing today? Welcome to Author Pep Talks. I see we have folks from all over the place here in the chat. Florida, Canada, Houston, Arizona. Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us today. So let's get going. We are going to talk about editing for your reader. So let us know in the chat where you're currently at in the editing process. If you are part of Novel 90, you know that December is our editing month. So hopefully we are moving in that direction. I feel like I'm constantly editing, so that's where I'm at personally. Can you believe that it is already the 16th of December? I don't know what happened to December at all, actually. It's gone. So welcome, though, to another pep talk. And my name is Bekah. I am the coach of Team Plantser. Welcome to one and all. Let's just take a breath together for a second. In, hold for 4, out, count to 4. So you've made it. We're here. It's December. We are still finishing up our Novel 90 writing challenge. And this is something that I have seen so many wins come out of Novel 90. This is our 3rd time doing it. I've seen so many wins. I have celebrated with our authors who have sold their book to Trad. I have celebrated with authors who are managing self-publishing with so much joy. And I have talked to so many of you about the editing process. So we are here today to talk a little bit about editing for your reader. Now, I can tell you about developmental editing. I can tell you about line editing. I can tell you about copy editing. But when I say editing for your reader, what do you think? What do you think I mean by that? You can drop it in the chat if you would like. But why should we care about editing for our reader? Let's get into it. So I like to think of this as kind of a gold standard rule when editing my work. And some people might find it a little bit harsh, but here we are. Your reader doesn't owe you their attention. They don't owe you anything. There's millions of books out there. You have to earn it. And this is a truth that makes editing uncomfortable sometimes, and it's still necessary. So when we're editing, we are making our book better, right? We're fixing, we're tweaking, we're doing all of those little things. But what does better actually mean? It means easier to read, easier to follow, and easier to stay with. When we draft, we're thinking about what we want to say, right? Whether you draft linear, whether you draft in scenes, whether you're a planner, a plantser, or a pantser, when we're in drafting mode, we're just getting whatever story we've got out of here and onto a page. Some with more organization than others. But when we edit, we're responsible for how all of those ideas land. Does that make sense? That is the shift from writing to author, or from writer to author. So your reader has options, endless options. There's a book out there for pretty much everything. You need to keep that in the back of your mind, because editing is kind of how you earn their time instead of assuming it. I like to say in all of my AutoCrit classes that it's great if I can get your $4.99 or $5.99 for my book, where you decided that my book was more important to read than your trip to Duncan. But what I want more than that is your time, because time is the most valuable thing that we have. I want you to be late to your morning meeting the next day. I want you to have a book hangover from my book. I want 6 hours of uninterrupted attention to the words that I put on the page. And how I achieve that is by paying attention to my editing. I need to have a product that my readers are going to want to dive headfirst into. Okay. Now, let's look at some of these phrases. DNF, did not finish. Couldn't get into it. I don't know why I should care. The pacing was a mess. Yawn. Boring and predictable. Listen, these are all things that we fear showing up in our reviews, right? At least I do. I don't want any of these things in my reviews. I don't worry if someone will dislike my book. I know there will be people who will. I write for my target audience. If someone vastly different from my target audience picks it up, there's a chance it's not their cup of tea, and that's okay. But the arrow to the heart, what will keep me up at night, is that they are bored by my book or hate it so much they didn't even finish it, especially if one of these comments would have been accompanied by something that could have been fixed with editing. None of us want this. We don't want our readers to quit our book. You know, I was reading in one of the author spaces, and I saw some advice being passed around that said that you don't really need to edit anymore. And I cannot stress to you how untrue that is. Please, if you take nothing else from this, know that editing is part of the process, and it is something you must do. So let's talk about the cognitive load when it comes to editing and our reader experience. So every sentence costs the reader something. Isn't that kind of a weird way to think of it? But work with me here. It costs their attention, their energy, and their focus. So when we think of our reader's attention like a battery, they start the book perhaps with a full battery, right? They're fresh, they're curious, they're willing, but every time they have to reread a sentence because it doesn't make sense, they have to figure out what you meant. They have to constantly be flipping back to the previous chapter in order to get the flow. They have to guess why something matters. They have to hold on to too many ideas at once. That's draining your battery. You can think of all of those issues like apps that are draining the battery of your phone if you'd like to. Editing is about reducing unnecessary effort so your readers can spend their energy on what actually matters, which is your story, the ideas, the emotion, the beautiful brilliance that you thought about and put on a page. I don't want your readers thinking about the fact that the formatting is so strange that they can't focus. I don't want your readers thinking about the fact that semicolons seem to be aggressively placed wherever the vibe felt right. I don't want your readers thinking about the fact that there's head hopping happening throughout your book and they never know who the speaker is. Instead, I want them fixated on your ideas, on your emotion and your story. So when readers quit, it's usually not because your writing is objectively terrible. Sometimes, I mean, there are some out there. I have definitely not finished the books because the writing was it needed a lot of work. It is mostly, though, because the experience becomes too much work. Put in the chat, if you are a bit scarce of free time right now. It's a very busy time of year. I have children. It is the holidays. There's the business, everything like that. My spare time is very aggressively guarded. If I'm going to spend my spare time with your book, I don't want it to be so much work to read your book that I prefer to do something like my never-ending pile of laundry. Don't make me compete with laundry over reading this book. You want your book to be easy. It can have difficult subject matter. It can make someone think. It can make someone question their existence. But it needs to be easy for them to fall into it. Otherwise, they're simply going to put it down and they likely won't pick it up again. And when they see your name on book 2, they're going to remember that book 1 was a lot of work. So book 2 is going to be less exciting. So how do we do this? We want to cut what doesn't serve. I've heard kill your darlings and all that stuff. I like killing zombies. It makes me feel like I've gamified it. So we're going to kill the zombies. Editing is about refinement. It's not the punishment phase of writing. Someone told me that every time they edit, it feels like they're being punished. And while I do want to unpack that for so many reasons, editing is not punishment. It is part of the writing process. You are not done with writing until you finish editing. Every unnecessary word or zombie phrase kind of slows your reader and diminishes the impact of your story. For example, if one of the phrases that I used to use all the time, and I've managed to cut it out over the last 15 years, but I love to use the phrase "in order to." You know what that could be? That could just be to. We don't need "in order to" all the time. One of my repetitive words that I still have to catch myself is the word "just." I have to go and do a search for "just" every time, and I have to go delete it, amongst a few other four-letter words that we don't need to say on the live stream. I also have to edit those out. We want to kill the unnecessary phrases that slow us down. Instead of saying "at this point in time," we say "now." Due to the fact that, because these adjustments are not about simplifying your writing. I talked to someone the other day that said they didn't want to sound like they weren't literary anymore. You can be literary. Use the $20 words if you want to. That's fine. What we want to do is make your ideas shine clearly. We want your reader to be able to understand your brilliance. So every time that you remove a word that doesn't belong, you're giving your reader more space to engage and connect with your story. This is why we cut what doesn't serve. When I say cut what doesn't serve, did I say cut out chapters? Did I say massively rage delete whole sections? I did not. We're going through and we're cutting unnecessary things, but we're not rage editing. Okay, I see we have some crutch words in there. That, just. These are things like that. Yes. Rachel says beta readers are great at noticing zombies. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's keep going. If my little thing will let me click it. Let me click. Okay. So when we're thinking about this, I want you to think and take your writer hat off for a little bit and put your reader hat back on, because we're not just writers. We're also readers. I have yet to meet a author who tells me that they don't read at all. I'm sure that person exists, and I haven't met you yet, and I would like to have coffee with you. But for the most part, every author I've ever engaged with is also a reader. And we know, as we discussed, that while everyone has 24 hours in one day, not everyone has the same 24 hours. My 24 hours are booked solid right now. I have a lot going on. Yours might also be for different reasons. Some people might be like, actually, today my main plan is to go to the grocery store and then I'm going to read my book. Not everyone's 24 hours are the same. Time is precious and readers' attention is finite. We want our books to be an escape, not something they need to escape from. So thinking about our readers while we edit, again, crucial. And did you know that formatting is a way to center your readers? It's true. Who has opened a book, or we don't have my Kindle here, an ebook, and it's just a wall of text? Just one giant wall of text. There's no indents, there's no paragraph spacing. Even better when it's like one single space. Has anyone had that particular issue? Yes, it is. I will actually put a book down if it is the wall of text that is so dense, it's overwhelming. It can tire you out. If I just see this itty bitty font, itty bitty single space, just wall of text, everything like that, I don't want to read it unless I'm attempting to read a reference book. Short paragraphs, clear transitions, using chapter and scene breaks. These are acts of care. You want to keep your paragraphs readable. We want to use transitions to guide the reader. We want to structure the content in a way where our key ideas are actually findable. When the text is easy to read, the reader can focus on the story, or if you're writing nonfiction, the argument or the emotion you want them to feel. When we skip our formatting and our editing for formatting here, this risks losing their attention before your ideas even have a chance to sink in. So this is something that when we think about reader-centered design, it's not just about, again, finding all of our semicolons or aggressively adding them. You do you. It's not about agonizing over word choice. It's also about how are we presenting our work. We want reader-centered design. This can also go to, I have friends who use a font that is easier for folks with, for example, dyslexia. Or I have some folks that I've talked to that make sure that all of their books are available in large print. There's different ways that you can do reader-centered design. I'm not saying you have to do all of those things, but you need to start thinking about how can I make this easy for people to read. Feedback is also an important part of the process. Alpha and beta readers are invaluable because they show you how your story is actually experienced. Editing is where their insight becomes actionable. Early readers help you spot confusion, pacing issues, and unclear stakes. Their responses reveal whether your narrative is engaging or frustrating. And without this step, you risk assuming that your story works when it may leave readers lost or disengaged. Editing is how you bridge the gap between what you think is happening, because remember, our brains know what is supposed to happen. We're the author. So we have author blindness when we're trying to do this for our own work. We know what is supposed to happen and our brain will fill in that gap, whether it's there or not. So we need to bridge that gap between what you think is happening and what the reader actually experiences. And the best way to do that is through feedback. Now we do have, I would be remiss if I didn't say that we do have our customized alpha and beta readers here at AutoCrit that you can use and create your own team. Some people have trusted colleagues, some people have critique groups, some people have professional beta readers. However you want to do this, I am encouraging you to get feedback, specific feedback from your target audience, not, how do I say this nicely? Not necessarily feedback from your friend's roommate's mom who just likes books but doesn't read your genre. You don't necessarily need that feedback. You need feedback from people who read your genre. Okay. Let's see. Oh, we have a question here. Jake asks, let me show this. Curiously, for authors who have the opposite problem, historically a very concise writer, which is great for short stories, but not novels. You know, Jake, what I would recommend is going to be to focus on sensory details. When you are already very concise, if you already have a lot of the rhythm there, you're going to want to build out on some of the sensory details and kind of focus your editing on how can I make this scene a little more immersive. And you don't have to go crazy with that. You don't have to make it just like a falling in face first. It's dramatically different than the rest of the book. But I would go through and I would look at some of my scenes and I would say, how can I add a sensory detail to make this just slightly more immersive, and go that way? Because remember, you can always add more. That would be what my first inclination would be to keep that moving. Hopefully that was helpful. Let me get back to my little slides. Okay. So I want you guys to embrace the so what test. So every scene, paragraph, and sentence should, in theory, justify its existence. So I want you to go through, especially if you have a problematic scene or chapter that you've been struggling with, I want you to ask yourself, does this advance the story? Does it develop your character, or does it clarify ideas? Does it maintain engagement and momentum? Does it deliver value to the reader? If the answer is not clearly or no, then it's probably a candidate for revision or removal, because editing ensures that every word, every phrase, every scene has earned its place. And skipping this step means that you are leaving gaps, confusion, or unnecessary friction in the reader's experience. So another thing we want to make sure that we're remembering during the editing process is that your book is a product. I know that it feels very uncomfortable for some folks to think of their art as a product. And perhaps for some, you're not intending to publish this for anyone other than your friends and family. And that's okay. But if you are thinking about publishing your book and sending it out into the world and hoping for commercial gain, you have to start thinking about your book as more than just a collection of words. It is an experience. It is a product that you are bringing to market. And editing is how you make that experience consistent and satisfying. Tension, stakes, and pacing, they need to be attended to. Emotional beats need to be clear. We have to know when we read your book why we need to care about these things. Ideas and plot have to progress logically. I spoke with someone who told me that they are exercising artistic license and that the rules of editing don't apply to them. I will say you can play. For sure. You can absolutely play. You can exercise your artistic license. We are all artists. I can't tell you not to. But what I can say is that some rules of editing are pretty hardcore. Making sure that you have the basics down. If you are constantly flipping back between, let's say, multi-chapter flashbacks with current events and there's no transition or there's no indication that that's what's happening, then what you're going to end up with is a book that's very obnoxious to read as a reader. And I can say that as a reader who has read that book, who has read books like that. I don't want to have to take notes in order to keep up with your story. If your artistic license is requiring me to have one of those like maps with the yarn on my bulletin board to try to keep track of things, and I need a support group in order to figure out what's going on, then your artistic license is not serving your reader, it's serving you. And you're going to have to make a choice. Is that who you want it to serve? If so, if you're like, this is my plan and this is what I want to do, then you need to own that there's going to be people who do not get it, and that your prospective audience might be smaller. So skipping editing is like releasing a product without testing it. Your readers could become confused or disappointed. Careful revision ensures that your story delivers on its promise, and that's ultimately what we want. I want your book to find its home with your readers, with people who appreciate it, who love it, who are obsessed with it, and they send you sweet little notes after they track down your DMs and be like, where's books 2, 3, 4, and 5? I want them now. That's what I want. Let's give them a product that they can obsess over. So, professional mindset. Again, editing is not optional. I know there's advice out there that's like, just full send that first draft. Please don't listen to them. Your book deserves the best you can give it, which is more than a first draft. Professional authors understand that finishing a draft is only the beginning. Editing is where the real kind of craft happens. You can refine deliberately, you can test, you can revise, you can respect your reader's time and engagement. Editing transforms a manuscript from something that exists to something that works. And I really don't want you guys to release something that's underwhelming or incomplete. I want you to release something that you can be proud of, that your readers are excited about. Which is why I always say that editing is an act of care. It's not just about finding flaws. It's about kind of unlocking the full potential of your work. Because every time you go through and do your revisions, improve your clarity or your pacing or your impact, you're not only honoring your own work, you are showing the best side of your creativity, but you're also honoring your reader's attention and making sure that your story is experienced as you intended. So I think that's something to really stress. I want you to use editing as a way to ensure that your story is experienced as you intended. Maybe you did take apart a beloved trope, turn it upside down, set it on fire, and then sprinkled a little glitter on top. I want to experience that. I want to be able to focus on that and be like, whoa, I've never seen that before. But I can't if the pacing is all over the place and we don't even know whose point of view we're in. Make sure that you're editing with the idea that you want your reader to experience this book that you've spent so much time creating. Take the time to revise, because that is how you build trust. It's how you create engagement. It's how you deliver a story that sticks with your reader. So remember that creativity shines in the content. It doesn't necessarily need to shine always in the editing. You can show your unique voice and style with plot preferences and character growth and worlds. And you can do all of that and still edit. You don't need to use your artistic license to just forego editing. You can recognize that every edit is progress. You can understand that skipping editing is a disservice both to your story and your reader. And you can understand that every cut or tweak brings your story closer to its best possible form, because I believe you can do this. You have the skill, you have the insight, you have the perseverance, and I know that your readers deserve your best, and so does your story. So I want to leave you with this of thinking about your readers as you are editing. I like to think about what perhaps I have different avatars that I built for my readers. So I like to think about how maybe avatar A is going to snort and make a horribly funny noise from laughing so hard at this scene while I'm editing a scene that has a lot of snarky dialogue. I want to think about how maybe in my romantasy book that I have maybe someone who has been waiting for a twist on the chosen one trope is going to squee and kick their feet in excitement. I want to think about my reader loving my book while I'm editing. A, it makes editing more interesting and fun. And B, I make sure that I'm centering who this book is for, because it's not just for me. If I wrote stories just for me, I would never publish them. Instead, I'm writing stories that I want to share, and I want to make them the best I can. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing this. There we go. I want to wish you all of the best on your editing journey. I hope that this was helpful, and I want to thank you for joining me for a pep talk today. Don't see. There we go. All right. Bye, everyone.